They were there, consistently, warmly, reliably there. And then one day, without a fight, without a reason you could hold in your hands, they weren't. Messages slowed, then stopped. Plans that were made quietly dissolved. The silence grew from days into weeks, and you kept checking your phone, not because you expected anything, but because the habit of them hadn't caught up with the reality yet. And then, just as quietly, they came back. A message. Casual, almost offhand, acting like the gap was nothing. Like time is a thing that happens to other people. And the strangest part, the part you can't quite explain to anyone who asks, is that some part of you was relieved. Some part of you let them back in before your brain even had a chance to weigh in on the decision. This cycle, disappearance, return, re-entry, is one of the most emotionally destabilizing patterns in human relationships. And yet, it's almost never discussed clearly, because it doesn't fit neatly into our categories. The person who leaves isn't a villain. The person who stays isn't simply a victim. The psychology underneath is more tangled, more human, and more painful than either of those framings allows. So let's actually go there. What is driving the person who disappears? What pulls them back? And why does the person left behind so often let them return? Not out of weakness, but out of something the brain is doing that they were never told about. What's happening in the person who leaves? The instinct is to read disappearance as rejection, as a verdict, as evidence that the relationship or you mattered less than you believed. But for the majority of people who pull away without explanation, the disappearance is not about the other person at all. It is about an internal threshold being crossed. Psychologists who study avoidant attachment, the pattern identified in the work of Bowlby and later expanded by researchers like Philip Shaver, describe a specific sequence that plays out in people who are wired for emotional self-protection. As a relationship deepens, as intimacy increases, and the other person begins to occupy more psychological space, the avoidant nervous system reads closeness not as safety, but as threat. The brain, calibrated by early experiences in which emotional dependence led to disappointment or engulfment, begins sounding a quiet alarm. Too close, too much, too real. And rather than name this, rather than say I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't know what to do with that, the person does the only thing their nervous system knows how to do when the alarm goes off. They create distance, not cruelly in most cases, not even consciously. They simply begin to need less contact. They become harder to reach. They tell themselves the other person is fine, that a little space is normal, that they'll reconnect soon. And they believe it, because the alternative, sitting inside the discomfort of their own emotional limits, is not something their nervous system has ever learned to tolerate. The disappearance is not about you. It is about the exact moment their capacity for closeness hit its ceiling. What pulls them back? Here is the psychology that almost no one talks about, because it requires holding two uncomfortable truths at once. The same avoidant nervous system that fled from closeness does not actually want distance. It wants closeness without vulnerability, safety without exposure, connection on terms that never fully ask it to show up. When the person pulls away and the immediate pressure of intimacy drops, something unexpected happens inside them. The threat response quiets, and into that quiet comes something else. The pull of the relationship, the warmth of what was there, the absence of the person they pushed away. Research on avoidant attachment shows that the longing doesn't disappear when avoidant individuals withdraw. It surfaces, often intensely, precisely once they've created enough distance to feel safe again. so they come back. Not because they've changed, not because they processed what happened and made a conscious decision to do things differently. They come back because the distance restored their nervous system to a level of activation it could handle. And from that calmer place, the desire for connection reasserted itself. This is the cycle in its purest form. Closeness triggers overwhelm. Overwhelm triggers withdrawal. Distance triggers longing. Longing triggers return. And the return resets the clock until closeness builds again, and the whole sequence begins from the beginning. It is not manipulation, in most cases. It is a nervous system doing the only thing it knows how to do, which does not make it less painful. It just makes it more accurate. What happens in the person left behind? Now for the part that is almost never explained honestly, and that the person on the receiving end most needs to understand. When someone you care about disappears without explanation, your brain does not simply register sadness and move on. It registers something closer to threat. The social pain network, the same neural circuitry activated by physical pain, studied extensively by researcher Naomi Eisenberger, lights up in response to rejection and social disconnection. Being left without explanation does not just hurt emotionally. It registers in the body as something that needs to be resolved. And here is where the trap is set. Unresolved social threat produces what psychologists call uncertainty anxiety, a state of chronic, low-level vigilance that keeps the mind cycling through questions that have no answers. Why did they go? Was it something I did? What changed? The brain, built to solve problems and resolve threats, cannot rest inside unanswered questions. So it keeps working, keeps reaching, keeps leaving the door open, not out of desperation, but out of a deep biological drive to close the loop. This is why, when the person returns, the relief feels so immediate and so disproportionate. It is not just pleasure at their return. It is the sudden resolution of an open threat signal that has been running in the background for weeks. The anxiety quiets, the loop closes, and in that moment of relief, the brain codes the returning person as the source of comfort rather than the original source of the wound. This is one of the most sophisticated and least discussed mechanisms in relational psychology. The person who caused the pain becomes, neurologically, the person who ended it. And that rewiring happens below the level of conscious decision-making, which is why "just don't let them back in" is advice that is so much easier to give than to follow. The invisible cost of each cycle. One return is recoverable. The nervous system resets. Trust is cautiously rebuilt, and people sometimes do find a more stable footing together. But the pattern across multiple cycles does something cumulative. Each disappearance trains the nervous system of the person left behind to treat the relationship as an unstable environment, one that requires constant monitoring. Gradually, what began as love starts to reorganize itself around vigilance. You stop being fully present in the good moments, because part of you is always watching for signs that the withdrawal is beginning again. A slightly shorter message, a slower reply, a shift in tone so subtle no one else would notice. That hypervigilance is not paranoia, it is adaptation. The nervous system learned, accurately, that stability in this relationship is not guaranteed, and it prepared itself accordingly. The cruel outcome is that the very alertness that developed as protection begins to corrode the ease and trust that the relationship needs to survive. You become anxious in a relationship that asked you to become anxious, and then anxiety is blamed for the relationship's failure. What changes things and what doesn't? Time does not change this pattern. Neither does patience or love or becoming easier to be with. The cycle doesn't break because one person manages it better. It breaks, when it breaks, because the person who disappears develops enough self-awareness to recognize what they're doing, and enough nervous system regulation to tolerate closeness without fleeing it. That is inner work. It cannot be done by the person waiting for them. For the person on the receiving end, the shift that matters is not closing your heart. It is becoming honest with yourself about what you are actually choosing every time you let the cycle continue. Not what you hope will change. What the pattern, repeated over time, is actually showing you. The door is yours. You decide who has the right to keep walking through it. If this mapped something you've been living inside, leave a comment, whether you recognize yourself in the one who left, the one who waited, or both. That honesty matters more than you think.